Hello, this is Rama Lakshmi, and welcome to the Prince Page Turner. This is where we do exciting conversations about new books. Today, the book is Inshallah Bangladesh, the story of an unfinished revolution. And I have with me one of the three authors of this book, Deep Halder. Welcome, Deep, to the print. Deep is also the Prince columnist. You would have read his byline and all his stories. He's our deep eye into Bangladesh. He knows Bangladesh like nobody else. The book is a disturbing window into what Bangladesh has become today. It's in fact unrecognizable, says this book, and that it's going through a dangerous transformation. Why is it important for India and Indians to understand this new Bangladesh and move away from the romantic ideas of Bangladesh as our partner from 1971 and a different kind of Bangladesh we all nurse in our heads?
If you remember, Rama, that even before the last elections in Bangladesh on January 7, 2024, I had done a column for you where I had said that there are two ideas of Bangladesh which are two fundamental ideas which come to define our eastern neighbor. One is the 1971 idea, a Bangladesh that rose over religiosity, to bring a nation together on language, on common culture. And the other is the idea of East Pakistan. And I had said in that column that these two ideas exist simultaneously. And it was my fear that given what was happening in Bangladesh, and this is a column I wrote in December 2023, a month before, less than a month before the 2024 elections, and I had said that given what was happening in Bangladesh's civil society, these two ideas existing parallelly and fighting with each other would be a problem for India. And then the elections happened and Hasina won. She came back to power. Uh, but soon after, you saw the quote unquote July revolution, and Hasina had to leave Bangladesh, come to India. And whatever's been happening in Bangladesh since that, Bangladesh very publicly going closer to Pakistan. Bangladesh, Muhammad Yunus from various international forum talking about chicken's neck, the open anti-India hatred in rallies, various rallies, even in Dhaka. The red carpet welcome to Pakistan and Pakistan members of Pakistan's armed forces. India needs to be very very worried because if I think we'll come to that later, but I think we had at least continued to look at Bangladesh through the prism of 1971 and India's role in in uh, in making Bangladesh into an independent country. But I think Bangladesh has moved very far away from that, even during Hasina, as far as the civil society was concerned. A large chunk of it, and post Hasina, the Yunus period, this little more than 1 year period, it has now publicly gone against India and towards Pakistan.
Let's go back to the August youth protests in Dhaka and across Bangladesh. How do we understand this? Do we see this as a revolution? Do we see this as a terror attack that Sheikh Hasina has told you in this book that it was an act of terror? Or do we see it as a global conspiracy? Just the day before yesterday, they've said that it's a Clinton, USAID, American conspiracy.
Yes.
How do we understand what went on?
I think in various, if you ask me, and this may not be the view of my co-authors, Jaideep Mazumdar and Shahidul Hassan Khokon, who would want to see it only as a terror attack or mostly as a terror attack. I think in different proportions, it's all of these. That's my understanding of the situation. So, was there a popular unrest against Hasina? Yes, there was. There is no denying it. Did people come out on the streets to protest against Hasina? Yes, they did. Were there students in it? Of course, there were students in it. But was it just that? No, it wasn't. One of the things that got me very interested in this book and in the story of the July Revolution was this character of Abu Said, the young man with arms stretched out, inviting the police to shoot him, and the police actually shooting him with a rubber bullet that hits him on the chest, and he falls down and dies. Now he became a T-shirt, he became like a Che Guevara figure, and not just in Dhaka and across Bangladesh, but even in Kolkata. And I've written about him in the book. There were students and intellectuals and artists who were celebrating him and saying, we are with Abu Sayyid. And so I started looking at who Abu Sayyid was. So Shahidul, of course, at that time, my co-author, he was inside Bangladesh. He was hiding because his name was on a kill list, and so I asked him, and then I asked other friends in Bangladesh who are journalists. So Abu Said was part of the Jamaat's student wing, and if you go through his Facebook posts and if you go through what idea of Bangladesh he had, it's an idea. It's what your first question is. It's an idea of Bangladesh that should really worry India. So the student protest was infiltrated by Jamaat. Now Jamaat has a student wing. It's a political party. It's an Islamist party, but it's also a registered political party now post Hasina. The Bangladesh Supreme Court had banned it from barred it from contesting in the last elections, but now it's very much a political force in Bangladesh. But yes, there was it's not just through Abu Said, but there was a huge Jamaat infiltration inside the July protests. There were also a lot of unanswered questions like who killed the policemen. The policemen protests were violent. Uh, Hasina's police and her paramilitary were violent, very violent. But there is a you see, if you see the Nepal protests, the former prime minister of Nepal's wife was burned to death. So horrific things happens when protests go out of hand, and the state tries to sort of put down the protesters, and they come back with more lethal force. But killing policemen in large numbers, stripping them, hanging them from bridges, is a very specific kind of training, which is not something that happens out of angry emotions. It's a message that you pass on. It's a kind of terror training that's imparted. And the way policemen were killed in the protests, they could have died in the clashes, but to be stripped, and not one or two, several instances of policemen being killed, stripped, hung from bridges, is a kind of messaging that is not really the messaging of a student protest. And then immediately after Hasina's downfall, geostrategists in Dhaka, in Delhi, and in Washington started speaking about an American conspiracy. Now, there's no way of for me to know this. I mean, it's something that's very, these days it's everything is an American conspiracy, and it's used very loosely.
Not just these days, for many
For many
decades.
days, and these days, I mean, of course, given the politics of our neighborhood, I mean, we are constantly talking of an American hand. But I think every geostrategist that I know of or read, they have Jeffrey Sachs, for instance, immediately after after Hasina's downfall, wrote a long column saying that there's an American hand in this, and it's the way the protests were orchestrated, the so-called July Revolution, points to America's involvement in it. And then Hasina herself told me about it. So did her Home Minister Asaduzzaman Khan Kamal, directly told me in a face-to-face interview for the book that there's America behind this, and America, the General Waqaruzzaman, the current army chief, who was then the army chief also, and ISI, they were all involved in this protest.
The book actually gives the last few hours for Sheikh Hasina, just hours before Sheikh Hasina actually fled the country. What happened? He brings intimate details about who said what happened, the situation room. Can you tell the viewers a little bit about why she was in denial, why she just didn't see it coming, and what the conversations were in the last few minutes or last few hours?
So this is a very important chapter, and we spent a lot of time because we didn't want to get it wrong. And it was pieced together by my co-author Jaideep Mazumdar, because he spoke to members of Sheikh Hasina's security detail, as also her ministers, and Shahidul, of course, helped with that information. And when once the events were reconstructed, we then sent it back to her core team, and so that we didn't make any mistake. Hasina was in denial, yes, but I think she believed uh, till the last minute that she could turn things around, because I think she was intimately aware of what it was, of who was behind the protests, and she somehow thought that she would not, she had enough control over her country and over her people and over her ministers and her security staff to manage this. I think that was perhaps a mistake. Having said that, on August 4th, a day before she left, she had given permission to her ministers and to senior members of her party to temporarily leave the country because the situation was going out of hand. Her home minister now tells us that Waqaruzzaman betrayed her because he said on the evening of August 4th that he's not going to use lethal force on protesters, which was a good call because there were a lot of young people there, and it anyway had become very bloody. But what Asaduzzama Khan Kamal said, that even without using lethal force, if you have armed personnel, police, the paramilitary and the military in large numbers on the streets, you could at least block protesters from coming. You don't have to shoot them down, but you can stop them from coming in. But he said that General Walkers had promised Hasina on August 4th that he would make sure that he would not let his people will not let protesters come inside Ganabhavan, but he went back on that promise. So the most important part of the reconstruction of what happened on August 4th and 5th was this admission by Asad Zaman Kamal, who said, I was in the room when General Walker said that his men, that is the Bangladesh army, will not allow the protesters to come in. And when Asaduzzama Khan Kamal asked him that should I need, because he was the home minister, he said that do I need much more police presence? General Walker told him, no, you do not, because the army is going to be there. And that's where the gap was. That there were instructions which we say later in the book that they were told to go back to their barracks, army personnel, and protesters were allowed in.
And also, how did India not see it coming? India was so deeply involved in um, Sheikh Hasina's government, and also in the peripheries. India was very active. How did we not see it coming?
Well, we got the sense that India did warn Hasina, and not just that one phone call at 1:30 p.m. on August 5th that told her that she should leave. There's no way she could stay back without harm coming her way. India perhaps saw it coming, but I think Hasina kept what you asked, that did she not see it? She did not. She perhaps misjudged the level of planning that went into the the protests against her. So it I think it was in hindsight it was a very well planned protest, and she thought that a heavy hand will be able to put down the protest, but she misjudged that situation. She also, even if she understood that there are foreign powers behind this, she could not. I think she could not manage the situation at the end.
So she misjudged and misled India.
Yes, I mean she misled herself also in a sense that she could not like I said, she could not manage it at the end.
For many in the world they celebrated what happened in August as a students' revolt, youth revolt, as an Arab Spring, Dhaka's Arab Spring, the second independence movement. All kinds of things were said, but the book, the authors, all three authors, what they portray is that this was actually Islam, the rise of Islamic nationalism, masquerading itself as a youth revolution, as a pro-democracy revolution. And you say that this Islamic revolution was looking to invent a shared common enemy, and that enemy is India, of course. The immediate enemy was Sheikh Hasina, but really the enemy was India. And you actually give details of what has happened in the last 1 year, 1.5 years. There have been calls for Sharia law. Women's football team, football matches have been cancelled. Women are heckled for not wearing hijab on the streets. Mujib's name cannot be uttered on national television. Playwrights have been told to censor themselves if they want to write about 1971. Street names have been changed. All kinds of things are happening. Did this revolution, did these protests throw up a false messiah in the name of Muhammad Yunus?
uh, yes, another column I did for you, which is good politician, bad statesman. So Muhammad Yunus has survived Bangladesh in this very chaotic period. And but look at what he is enabling. The Jamaat is now a very potent force in Bangladesh's politics. The Jamaat's, some of it may sound funny, but the Jamaat's Amer has been saying all kinds of things like when to kiss, when not to. He has I just saw a headline in Bangladesh's one of Bangladesh's newspapers where he said that women should should spend more hours at home, and the government should reward them if they do. Now, these kinds of things from a party whose students' wing has won the Dhaka University Students' Poll, which led Shashi Tharoor to do that tweet and then that column which we discussed at length. And then Shashi Tharoor was also criticized both in India and in Bangladesh for reading too much into a university poll. But it's not just the results of a university poll; it's also what's happening in civil society. Now, mm, dramatically, perhaps things won't change in Dhaka, which is what we look at. But across Bangladesh, especially in the hinterlands, things have been changing very fast. Bangladesh's civil society has been changing. There is still some anti-incumbency against Hasina. There is also a rise, uh, very public, and it's not just the Army League and its supporters who are coming out on the streets and coming on social media to say this, but there is also some kind of support for her now within Bangladesh, given what's been happening in the country since. And this is Army League ecosystem is very big, but even otherwise, and it's very risky for any Bangladeshi to come out and say this, given the kind of arrests that have been happening. But I think people are now, at least a section of the population, are now realizing that what was, which is the period with Hasina in power, was somehow better than what is or what is going to be. But they can't, of course, say it. Yesterday there were huge protests, Army League protests, which were unthinkable because there was immediate clampdown. Now there are protests across Bangladesh. There's a call for shutdown. Uh, there is Mujib was celebrated this year after all those pictures last year of his statues being pulled down. Several celebrities in Bangladesh on the anniversary of his assassination put out pictures of Mujib on their social media accounts. Which I was very surprised to see because Mujib was demonized all through last year. After the fall of Hasina. So I think, but parallelly, there is a push towards a kind of society that at least the 1971 generation and people who wanted a very secular, very modern Bangladesh do not want. But it's in a very confused state where people do not know whether to continue to criticize Hasina for being a quote unquote a dictator, or at least a very authoritarian leader, or to realize that the trajectory, the current trajectory, will lead them to a country they can't recognize.
Yeah. There are two chapters in the book. One is Why Do Young Bangladeshis Hate India? And the other is India's New Headache. We keep getting surprised every time our neighbor hates us. Nepal, Bangladesh. Um, but how can India repair its ties with Bangladesh now?
Bangladesh sees India as a big brother. It always has. The 15 years of Hasina and her authoritarian rule has only made matters worse. It's a very new generation in Bangladesh. We can keep talking about 1971. Many of them do not really give a damn about 1971. They see Hasina as an authoritarian leader. They see elections that were stolen. They see all the wrong things her administration did. Parallelly, they look at India as as this big brother who had a puppet in Hasina and did what it had to through Hasina, which is not really true, because India was not always happy with Hasina also. Hasina did not always listen to India, but uh, the hate for India in civil society is real. And I think some of our conversations only focus on the religiosity, which is a wrong way of looking at it. I think there are issues like border killings where a large section of Bangladeshis, including some of their finest young journalists, have done very thorough investigative pieces on border killings in the last decade. And and then religiosity, they see Hindutva as something to worry about. And in their universities, in their colleges, on their social media, they keep talking about how Muslims are looked at in a certain way in India, how Bangladesh is looked down upon in India. Um, so I think all of these, like I said, it's a very, very, very complex issue. And Hasina being in power for so long, and Hasina being seen as a friend of Prime Minister Modi, did not help matters. India did misjudge the civil society sentiment in Bangladesh.
So how can India repair it?
It's very tough now to repair it, because India is what India is. India is now a very powerful country. I mean, India has its place in the world, and the more powerful you get, I think Bangladesh will continue to see you as a threat. I have read columns, edit page columns by some of their top intellectuals, and they have started defining their nationalism uh, as something that is anti-India. So they are willing to forget what the Pakistan army did, the massacres, the genocide, the mass rapes of 1971, because they feel that the need of the hour is to go closer to Pakistan strategically, so that they can brace up for India. So I think for India now to be able to sort of change the mind of its Bangladesh's civil society is very difficult. What India should do, perhaps according to me, is should engage with more political players and not just the Army League, which I think India has started doing. But I think India should, I think, visibly speak to more political players in Bangladesh.
Is it difficult for India to do that with Sheikh Hasina as our guest in India today?
India has invested a lot in on Sheikh Hasina, and yes, that is a feeling in Bangladesh that if she is there, how can we do business with you? But having said that, what I know is most of their top political parties are really, really willing to talk to India. It's interesting because they say very different things to their constituencies, because they know that anti-India hate is a very potent thing right now in Bangladesh. So they can't publicly be seen or heard as being pro-India. They have been wanting to talk to India. I think that's a plus if there is elections in February next year, and if India does get to talk to several political players in Bangladesh, that's a good thing. Civil society, I think it will take some more time, because anti-India hate is people celebrate, like for instance, the blasts yesterday in Delhi. There are social media celebrations in Bangladesh. Yes, the last evening's blast. So I think and like I said, not all of it is should be looked at through the prism of religiosity. There is also this sentiment that India has taken us for a ride ever since.
And yet, for a brief while, it looked like Bangladesh could do no wrong. Bangladesh was India's sweet spot. It was economy was doing well, booming export industry. We had a friend in their leader, and she was cracking down on terror. Uh, Everything was sounded perfect, even though parallelly we had this anti-Bangladeshi immigrant campaign, the domestic policy. So it seemed like it was dissonant, but actually both these trends kind of travel parallelly. Um, so and how quickly everything just came undone in Bangladesh from that sweet spot. Now you keep talking about the state of Hindus in Bangladesh,
Yes.
and you even talk about a Hindu homeland. Some fantasize about having a Hindu homeland, a second partition. You talk about the Bangladeshi Sanatani Party. Should India engage with the Hindus there?
So the call for a Hindu homeland, which is the name of a chapter in the book, is not a new one. It goes back to 2001, when the new Bangladesh government, ministers in that government had given an interview to the BBC saying that there is a conspiracy to carve out a Hindu homeland from within Bangladesh. Now, this of course followed 2001 BNP, that is the Bangladesh Nationalist Party, and the Jamaat. They came together and they formed the government. It was a very bad year, particularly bad year for Hindus in Bangladesh. So if you see the spikes in atrocities against Hindus in Bangladesh, 2001 in recent memory stands out, because I got a chance to speak to Bangladesh's president, Mohammad Shahabuddin Chuppu, and I spoke to him when Hasina was still the prime minister. Though Hasina is no longer the prime minister, he has continued to be the president of Bangladesh. Uh, so Mohammad Shahabuddin Chuppu was part of a judicial commission that looked into the anti-Hindu riots that took place in 2001 after BNP Jamaat came to power. And he told me horrific stories because he said he went across Bangladesh, to inquire into what had happened, and he said that it was so bad that he couldn't even put all of it in the report. Uh, so what happened? So this was 2001 when the then Bangladesh administration gave an interview to to BBC saying there is a conspiracy for a Hindu homeland. There are underground activities that wants to carve out a Hindu homeland out of Bangladesh. Now, those conversations are back in Bangladesh post Hasina. Did they die out in between? I don't know. I mean, there are reasons to believe that there's a section of Hindus, if not all Hindus, secretly crave homeland which is cut out of Bangladesh. Now, this is not something anybody will agree to. I mean, whether it's Hasina or BNP, or definitely not Jamaat. But this is not a new sentiment, and Hindus have started feeling they won't always come out and say it. In fact, there are community leaders who are also saying that, who are also repeating what Yunus has said, that it's India generated fake news that Hindus are constantly attacked in Bangladesh. I call them Yunus's Hindus, but there is a sentiment that the situation is getting untenable for Hindus to remain in Bangladesh.
And in the last 1.5 years, Pakistan and now increasingly Turkey have gotten involved in Bangladesh and getting strategically kind of twinned with Bangladesh. Is this a new kind of encirclement that India should reckon with?
It is, we are talking the morning after a very dastardly attack on Delhi. On 10th November, uh, Economic Times put out a story. I think it went unnoticed, saying that Hafiz Saeed has there was there's a there's a video clipping which shows that one of Hafiz Saeed's top commanders, Commander Saif, has there's a video clipping of him saying that Lashkar-e-Toiba should attack India via Bangladesh. It came out in Economic Times on November 10th, which is yesterday, and then the attack happened. Now, this attack may have nothing to do with Bangladesh, but there is a with Turkey, with Pakistan. Pakistan's Navy chief was in Bangladesh. Uh, they are now uh, one of Jamaat's top leaders was in New York a month ago, and he in a public gathering said that lakhs of Bangladeshi youth are ready to attack India. He said it in New York, and we did the story. I mean, as did international press. So these are not. I mean, and then attacks are happening. These are not just theories anymore. The threat is very real. And like I said, I mean, what you asked about Muhammad Yunus, I mean, one of he since he took over as caretaker to the interim government, dreaded terrorists with very who are vocally anti-India have been let out of jail. They have come out of jail. So I mean, all of it point towards India being encircled.
And Mohammad Yunus went to China and he kind of
Spoke about chicken's
spoke
neck. Yes.
chicken's neck. He
Yeah.
talked about being the guardian of the Bay of Bengal
Yes.
and how
Yes.
China could use Bangladesh to.
Yes.
And then Himanta Sarma also responded saying we know about the
Yes.
chicken's neck. This breakup the country fantasy between these two countries. How did that come about? How strong is that?
It's been happening for a while. It just didn't come out in public domain. Um, the fundamentalist group within Bangladesh, who to some degree, though not fully, Hasina had been able to push back, had wanted to break India up. They were not happy with no longer being part of Pakistan. They were not happy remaining East Pakistan and becoming Bangladesh. They were not happy with a secular constitution, and their main target has always been India. It is just that with since Hasina has been removed, all of these things are coming to the fore. So these are not new fantasies. These fantasies have remained for a very long time. We are now just seeing them on print and on TV. It's always been there.
You also in the book talk about, and you have actually interviewed some of the bloggers who fled Bangladesh during Sheikh Hasina because they felt persecuted, the atheist, secular YouTubers and bloggers. How are they seeing Bangladesh now?
They are seeing Bangladesh as a country that cannot be salvaged unless some of them have been very critical of Sheikh Hasina. And in fact, like you said, that they had to leave Bangladesh mostly during Sheikh Hasina's time. Now they have most of them have become very pro Sheikh Hasina because, like I said, like a section of uh, quite a large section of Bangladesh's civil society, they feel that however Hasina was, this would not have happened. What's happening in the last 1 year? So they are saying that Hasina did many things wrong, including not being hard enough on fundamentalists, which they suffered because they had to leave Bangladesh and many of their friends died. There were blogger killings, and those killings happened in broad daylight. But they are now seeing that what's been happening in Bangladesh since, it is just East Pakistan by another name. So uh, you know, there's a term in Bengali "Mondir Bhalo," as in, and they're using it for Sheikh Hasina, which is she's not perfect, but at least she was better than what is right now.
Hmm. Do you see them returning?
I don't see how they'll return if elections are going to be held in February. I think it's very difficult for them to return because there are cases against Hasina. She'll be tried if she goes back. She has not officially named a successor. The party's activities remain banned in Bangladesh. The party's youth wing, the Chhatro League, is banned in Bangladesh. Most of their top leaders are outside Bangladesh. Those who are inside Bangladesh are mostly in jail. Others are in hiding. Some of them are being very brave and coming out to protest against Yunus and for their right to participate in the next elections. But if elections are held, and there's a big question mark on that, if elections are held in February, I don't see how Army League is going to participate in it.
Do you see the bloggers returning?
Bloggers won't return. I don't see any of the atheists, quote unquote. Not all of them are atheists, though. There are also secular bloggers, but many of them have very strong sense of atheism in them. There are some of them are ex-Muslims. I don't see them returning in Bangladesh anytime soon. They're in Europe, they're in America. They're going to stay there,
And India as well.
and India as well.
In hindsight, what did August protests really achieve? Are we at a time now to evaluate it?
I think from our perspective, it showed us how encircled by enemies we are. It showed us that now it's not just Pakistan. Uh, it showed us that we should perhaps uh, look at our neighborhood with far more clarity and talk to diverse voices and not just one political party or one leader. I think that's a lesson. Did we not talk to leaders? I know for a fact that we did speak to other political players in Bangladesh, but I think we need to very visibly engage, like many foreign missions do in India. They talk to our opposition leaders, they talk to other players, they talk to regional parties. I think we need to diversify who we speak to. It also shows us that we are in for very bad times.
That's a somber note to end this conversation on. Thank you for this book
Thank
and
you, Rama.
for joining the print for this important conversation.
Thank you.